Hello there, welcome to my little channel. Bit of a heat wave on here at the moment. I'm going to keep this short hopefully and get out in the sun again. Today, no great drama, no death and destruction, just some more quirky things from history that you might find interesting. Hope you do. Let's get into it. Okay, we'll start off with the connection between the Sharp novels and that great old Irish folk song Raglan Road. It's a much beloved song, Raglan Road, based on a poem by Patrick Kavanagh, who actually gave it himself to the singer with the Dubliners, Luke Kelly, who made it very famous. It's a song that a lot of people have a high regard for. It's a song of unrequited love. The poet sees this woman walking on Raglan Road on an autumn day and falls for her big time, and is sort of cursed by his love for her in a way.
On Raglan Road of an autumn day, I saw her first and knew that her dark hair would weave a snare, that I might one day rue.
There was a woman who inspired that poem. She was a well-known beauty around Dublin at the time, smart woman, a medical student. Her name was Hilda Moriarty, and she was actually kind of an early influencer. Shops, boutiques in Dublin would give her clothes to wear to draw attention to themselves. She was very well known. She had no interest in Patrick Kavanagh, who was a good deal older and a pretty gruff, unlikable fella from all accounts as well. She did tolerate his friendship, but she ended up marrying a politician, Donna O'Malley, who went on to become the Minister for Education, who is credited with introducing free second level education in Ireland. And then this famous beauty, who inspired Ireland's favourite folk song, went on to have a son, Dara. Dara O'Malley became an actor, is best known for starring alongside Sean Bean in the Sharp series as Sergeant Pat Harper, Sharp's right-hand man. Did a good job. Didn't play him quite as tough as the guy in the books, but did a good job. Dara O'Malley, son of the beauty that inspired On Raglan Road. To touch on a nautical theme, the bulbous bow at the front of a modern ship. What's that all about? You might see them, they're quite distinct, very noticeable, and there's a very logical reason for them. It's all to do with reducing the drag on a ship. The way the bow works is the bow travelling ahead of the ship produces its own bow wave. When the ship is moving forward through the water, it creates a bow wave. And one of the biggest things it has to push through is the bow wave it creates itself. That drag as that rises up the sides of the ship as the ship pushes through. Anything they can do to reduce that bow wave is important. The big bulbous bow you see there, that creates its own bow wave, and it serves to cancel, similar to the way noise cancelling headphones work, by inverting the waveform and then cancelling out the original waveform. The bow wave from the bulbous protuberance at the front of the ship will be in antiphase to the bow wave that's produced by the main bow, and so that reduces the wave considerably and has a big effect on the drag experienced by the ship, and a big effect then on the engine power that's needed to overcome that to reach a certain speed. It can have as much saving as 10 to 15%, which, given the huge voyages and the lifespan of ships, is massive over that time, which is why it's worth doing. These things were, this was kind of, the whole principle was kind of discovered by accident around the 1900s when they had ships with a ram bow, and there was no proper science attached to it. It was more by experience, and people did experiment with it up into in the Second World War. Some American carriers in the First World War, I think, had a kind of a ram bow to protuberance to try and enhance this effect that they were noticing, that it made a difference to the standard bow. The battleship Yamato, the Japanese battleship, had a significant protruding bow as well in World War II. Actually, as we're looking at the Yamato, take a look at all the anti-aircraft weaponry they needed. By the end of the war, it was very clear that aircraft were deciding everything. Some incredible amount of firepower there. So after the war, people looked into it more, and in the 60s, a Japanese engineer got very involved in developing the more modern kind of bulbous bow. Americans were there involved with computer modeling, and a lot of people were contributing to the idea, and now we have various different types of bulbous bow that create that anti-phase wave that limits the bow wave on a ship, creating that reduced drag and big savings in fuel. Another quirky story you may not have heard is about Pope Framosis. Pope Framosis was a pope at the end of the 9th century, around 890, around then. He'd been an Italian guy, became a kind of a papal diplomat, was involved in all kinds of political shenanigans, had backed one particular candidate for the Holy Roman Empire position, or the Carolingian Empire as it was known at the time. It's extremely complicated, this whole period. When it looked like there might be some blowback from competitors or relatives of that particular person that he had backed, he fled his position in Rome, and for that misdemeanor or crime of abandoning his position, he was actually excommunicated. Then changes of power, suddenly he's back in favour again, and he ends up becoming Pope. There was an awful lot of political stuff going on when he was Pope in the Eastern Church, also power struggles in France, and he was playing people off against each other. And when he died, there was riots after he died. There was a Pope installed more or less straight away who only lasted 15 days. Pope Boniface VI, and then he was replaced by Pope Stephen VI, who immediately declared Pope Boniface's election null and void. And Stephen then, 9 months after the death of Pope Formosus, Pope Stephen had Formosus dug up. The carcass was, as I say, about 9 months old, placed in a papal throne, dressed as a pope, and then they proceeded to conduct a trial. The trial was called the Cadaver Synod, and they had some young lad supposed to answer in his place, and they conducted a trial, found him guilty, stripped him of his papacy, tore the papal raiments off him, leaving just a hair shirt or something, and they cut off the fingers that he had used to give blessings, and they threw his body into the River Tiber. His papacy was declared null and void. His body ended up being recovered from the river. He was reinterred in St. Peter's. Pope Stephen went on to be strangled, I believe. 10 years after Formosa's death, he was dug up again by Pope Sergius, and they had another bit of an old trial, and they cut some more fingers off, and this time they beheaded him, and then they threw his body in the river again, and it was recovered again, and it was reinterred again. Pope Formosus, if you want to look it up. There's actually a good book. Peter de Rossa has a book there called Vicars of Christ, which has incredible stories from the papacy, and the mad stuff that went on, if you ever want to look into that. Vicars of Christ, Peter DeRosa. My kids, when they were young, came back from school one day to announce that they were seatbelt sheriffs, which turned out to be some scheme where people went from school to school educating the kids on the importance of wearing seatbelts and pronouncing them seatbelt sheriffs, giving them a little badge and sending them home to police the wearing of seatbelts in their family, which was a good idea, except my son said to me after he explained it to me, he said, "Dad, what's a sheriff? They don't have westerns on TV anymore. When we were kids, when I was a kid, there was Lancer, there was the High Chaparral, there was Bonanza, there was F Troop, there was Dusty's Trail, The Big Valley, How the West Was Won was a series, Kung Fu was a western series, of course. There was loads of them. One of my favourites was Alias Smith and Jones, starred Pete Jewell and Ben Murphy. At the start it explains in all the trains and banks they robbed, they never shot anybody. But they're negotiating amnesty. And the governor of the state they're in tells them that they have to go straight for a while and then they'll get their amnesty. So that's what the series is about. Those two lads trying to be good guys with people after them for their past, trying to be good so they can get their amnesty. And that was probably inspired by Billy the Kid when he was involved in the Lincoln County Range War. He was involved in a struggle between landowners, small guys versus big guys kind of thing. The Lincoln County Range War and the Johnson County Range War are quite famous instances in American history where that kind of stuff went on. You probably would have heard of the movie that Michael Cimino made after he made Deer Hunter, called Heaven's Gate. It's all about the Johnson County Range War. There was a movie about the Lincoln County Range War called Chisholm with John Wayne, where John Wayne famously used the word bollocks. But Billy the Kid he wasn't, like the story of Billy the Kid is a little different to the legend that has him killing 21 men by the time he was 21 and that kind of stuff. I think he killed more like half a dozen. His real name wasn't William Bonney, it was Henry Carty, no H, C-A-R-T-Y, son of an Irish immigrant woman. In the Lincoln County Range War, he had been pleading his case to the governor, trying to get amnesty because he was claiming that he was on the side of right in that. And the governor was tentatively negotiating some kind of amnesty. What makes this interesting is the governor had written a novel, and the novel became a big hit. And once the novel became a big hit, the governor went off to become a famous celebrity in the literary world and forgot about poor old Billy the Kid, who ended up being shot himself. The novel the governor had written that put paid to Billy the Kid's efforts at amnesty was a novel called Ben-Hur, which you all know from the movie. And that governor's name was Lew Wallace, the author of Ben-Hur. Right, I'm going to finish up on a couple of nautical things now. For any Star Trek fans, something I was only reading yesterday might interest you. There's a book I'm reading called White Jacket. It's by Herman Melville. And I had made a disparaging comment, kind of, about Moby Dick in the first video I ever did, which was about nautical novels, top 10 nautical novels. And one of the one of you guys, one of the commenters, a guy called Snarnock, pointed to me towards Redburn. He said I should give it a try, Melville's first novel about his first voyage, a novel based largely on his own first voyage, and it was a fantastic read. I loved it. And White Jacket is a novel that Melville wrote based on his time when he joined. Even though he was an educated man, he joined as an ordinary sailor, a US man of war, and the novel White Jacket is based on that. And at one point in it, towards the end, he talks about a character on board nicknamed the Professor, who's a teacher, and he's teaching the young midshipmen maths. He also teaches them the basics of ballistics and navigation, and he also brings it on himself to instruct them in naval tactics and strategies. And during one lesson that Melville describes, he talks to them about a battle fought with the British Admiral Rodney and the French just off the coast of Dominica. And Rodney defeated the French. And he draws their attention to a particular ship, the French battleship, French man of war called the Glorieuse. And he describes the situation of the Glorieuse as the British approach. And he challenges the young men one at a time to describe how they would save the ship, the Glorieuse. And each one of them gives a version of how they thought it could be saved. And each proposal involves further description of the damage and why that cannot be done. And he ends up explaining at the very end then that the ship cannot be saved, which made me wonder, was that little story the inspiration for the famous Kobayashi Maru test? Could be. And one more final nautical note. I did come across a reason as to why some sailors have pompoms on the top of their hats. Apparently it's to train them to get the clearance right when ducking through hatchways, so they won't be banging their heads if they get used to giving clearance for their pompoms, which I thought was kind of clever. Well, there you go now, folks. I hope you found something of interest there. I'm going back in the sun. You should turn this off now and go outside and play. Bye now. Mind yourselves.